Matthew Hoey playing Abzan mid-range, and Hoey, his accomplishments, well, they are vast, and we're going to see him do battle here this weekend.
And Hoey's list not really mucking around with a lot of 1s and 2-ofs of various cards. Pretty decisive list, a lot of 3s and 4-ofs.
Belfatto to start with the Temple of Malady. We'll see what he has on his second turn of the game. Is Hoey with a Sandsep Citadel, so Matthew making it known exactly what he's up to, as has Belfatto now with the Island and the copy of Sylvan Caryatid. So underway here in what looks to be probably a pretty lengthy green mirror.
I'd imagine so. Now, what's interesting about Belfatto's build of this deck is that this is not any sort of Whip of Airbow strategy. All of the graveyard synergies that are going on here are to facilitate Dig Through Time and Treasure Cruise. Goes all the way to the top of the curve with things like Doomway Giant, one copy of Pearl Lake Ancient. So this is much closer to an Esper control list that happens to be playing green than white than any of the Sultai mid-range or Whip of Airbow strategies we've seen up until this point.
And this is a style of deck that Michael likes to play quite a bit. He's an Ohio guy. Of course, I'm from the area, so I see him in a lot of PTQs. He does have a Grand Prix top 8 to his name as well. Back in 2006 at the Flash Grand Prix, he was one of the brave souls playing Suicide Black that weekend who top 8'd.
A reasonable metagame choice if you weren't that concerned with winning. Well, you would have just played Flash instead. But,
yes.
you know.
Well, he won quite a bit.
Oh, yeah, of course.
To his credit.
Other people won with other decks. People played Goblins, you know.
They sure did.
Goblins.
What are you trying to say?
Goblins in that field. People played Goblins and won.
Runner-up in the tournament. A Siege Rhino does come down here for Hoey. Of course, very powerful card. Puts Matthew up to 22. Belfatto down to 17. Belfatto's going to sacrifice Blue Delta, go down to 16, and we'll see what he's got for this turn.
I believe in the hands of the great Owen Turnwall.
That's correct, second place.
Perhaps his greatest Magic accomplishment, coming in second with Goblins in that field. That is incomprehensible to me.
Take away Player of the Year, take away his Pro Tour top 8, take away all of that stuff.
Second at Grand Prix Flash with Goblin Lackey and friends. That is incredible.
Let's see what Belfatto has here. It's not a Goblin, but it's still pretty good. It's Prognostic Sphinx, and 5 toughness is a big deal here.
Prognostic Sphinx is all sorts of good against Abzan decks. It's pretty hard for them to punch through without Abzan Charm. It's good at attacking Planeswalkers. Can't kill it, obviously, with spot removal spells.
And the first thing I always check here, when I see a Prognostic Sphinx against a Siege Rhino, I always look to see, okay, does he have Abzan Charm in his deck? The answer is yes, Hoey does. He's got 3 copies of the card. We'll see if he has one in his hand as he deploys a Courser to start things off. Thoughtseize is the top card. Let's play a Caves, trigger the Courser. Gain a little bit of life here. The follow-up, it looks like he's going to take a point of damage, is a copy of Bile Blight. Going to take care of his Caryatid and the other 2 that are on that side of the table. Creative play, but one looks like to be pretty good right now. Yeah,
that was not a shabby play. Though, if I was Matthew Hoey, my first order of business was just attack with Siege Rhino.
Yeah.
There's a reasonable chance Michael doesn't block there, out of respect for Abzan Charm.
And also now, because he's going to see the top card of your deck the entire time, he's going to know if you have Abzan Charm. Because if you weren't attacking last turn, that means you don't have Abzan Charm. So now he's going to see every card that you draw, so he's going to know that, okay, well, you don't have Abzan Charm until you actually do have it.
Right, because, you know, it's... If he has Abzan Charm there and Michael blocks, it's so much better to Abzan Charm and Bile Blight that turn instead of Courser and Bile Blight that Michael now knows. And the cost of the attack is essentially nothing.
It's a minor information leak there by Hoey, I think. Thoughtseize is what he's going to draw. Top card from Courser is a copy of Llanowar Waste. That'll come into play. Trigger the Courser, of course, up to 22.
Now, that said, the Bile Blight play from Matthew was still creative and very good here, as he's pinning Michael on amount of mana while Matthew's ahead on board, and also colored mana as well, as Michael has 2 islands, pretty clearly leaning on those Caryatids to give him the sufficient colored mana to function.
Oh, he thought about leading off with the Thoughtseize, but he's going to attack first, so he'll come across here for 6 points of damage. Now he'll play the Thoughtseize that he drew. See if we get a look at Belfatto's hand, and we will. Doomway Giant, Hero's Downfall, Sultai Charm, Hero's Downfall, and Hero's Downfall. So 3 of the versatile rule spell, 1 Sultai Charm, and a Doomway Giant, but none of those spells are currently castable.
No, and that's part of the reason that Hoey went for that Bile Blight play was he saw the lands that Michael was on, and it's pretty likely Michael has a handful of uncastable stuff, either with quantity of mana or colored mana, and you see both things going on right now.
So we'll see a card Hoey wants to select in this situation. Tough to take a Hero's Downfall here when your opponent has 3 of them. Sultai Charm doesn't seem all that appealing. And then Doomway Giant, well, we're pretty far away from that one.
I still feel like Hero's Downfall is probably the take. It's not great, but if the Sultai Charm is not appealing and the Doomway Giant is nonsense with Utter End on the top of Matthew's deck, so whatever.
Oh, Siege Rhino's going to come down. A little drain, a little gain. Looks like Hoey's going to push himself to 20. Belfatto's down to 7. And it's a passing of the turn. Prognostic Sphinx attacked last turn. We'll see if it still continues, to go on offense on this turn. There's an Opulent Palace.
Yeah, I mean, Michael had to scry last turn in an attempt to find mana that he needs.
Utterend's going to go after Prognostic Sphinx, I imagine. Discard here. That'll tap it, but the coast is clear to make this attack. And given that Hoey knows Belfatto's hand, it's lights out. Matt Hoey's going to win game number 1 here over Michael Belfatto. Obs on mid-range up a game here over Sultai Controls. We turn our attention to the sideboards, and we will start with Belfatto and his creative Sultai Control deck. What's he got over there?
A Garruk Apex Predator, 2 copies of Disdainful Stroke, 2 Thoughtseize, 2 copies of an Unravel the Aether, 2 Negate, a Silence the Believers, 2 copies of Vileblight, a Drowned Sorrow, 2 copies of Back to Nature. Not a lot that I'm thrilled with here. I think the Thoughtseizes are fine, the Disdainful Strokes are good, the 1 copy of Silence the Believers is good, and the 1 copy of Garruk. I think those are all fine cards to bring in.
Other side of things, Hoey's got 2 main deck NFNs of the foremost, and he's got 2 more in his sideboard, so he can board up to 4 of those if he'd like. He's got a Dune Blast, and then Hostilities, an Obzon Charm, 4th Obzon Charm being in the board, 3 in the main deck, 2 Nissa World Wakers, an Erase, a Liliana Vest, 2 Drowned Sorrows, a Vileblight, 2 Read the Bones, and Nutterend. But what you find here is what you typically find with Obzon midrange. A deck that hedges a lot game number 1, and they can sideboard appropriately in a specific matchup for games number 2 and 3. And that's what he's got the ability to do here with cards like Read the Bones and Nissa.
I think that he just wants to become a card advantage deck, and the cards you just mentioned I think are excellent to that end. The Nissas and the 2 copies of Read the Bones. I think the Liliana Vest is also fine, and the Obzon Charm to that end. I don't like going to more copies of NFNs of the foremost because Michael's deck is probably flush with just random removal spells to take care of that kind of stuff. I want to focus a lot more on card advantage, planeswalkers, a couple removal spells, and have that be the core game plan.
I think that this matchup gets really tough for Belfatto after sideboard again because Hoey just has the ability, and this feels like Jund from years past where, you know, you're hedging a lot game 1, but then the stuff he gets to bring in and the stuff he gets to take out, he gets to take out some pretty bad cards and bring in some really nasty ones.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, just having access to 4 Obzon Charms and Read the Bones is already pretty bad for Michael, who's trying to do a lot of 1-for-1 trading with this deck. On top of that, threats like Nissa, if they resolve, are really problematic.
Well, these players will shuffle up here for game number 2. We will talk about Patrick Chapin's fantastic book, Next Level Magic. It has been remastered for 2015.
Yeah, exciting updates, new examples, new cards being described. Also available in paperback for the first time in approximately here. Also available as an ebook if you're more interested in that. StarCityGames.com/NLM. You can order your copy today.
It's like a remastered CD. You know, you change it up, you put some of those remixes on there that didn't make the original one. It's perfect. It's updated with new images and new stuff.
Yeah, my ideal remastering is the Biggie Smalls album that cuts out all of Puff Daddy's mumbling over all the tracks. That would be my first choice for a remastering.
Oh, so you don't like Puff Daddy?
I don't like him mumbling all over Biggie's tracks.
Oh, well, he can't stop.
I know he can't.
And he won't stop.
I know he can't stop.
Would you like me to stop?
I would like you and Puff Daddy to stop mumbling over Biggie's tracks.
We should make a CD.
Yep.
And I can mumble on your tracks.
Yeah, that'd be great.
How does that sound?
It would breed a lot of resentment.
Okay. We'll talk to...
I would pursue a deal with another record label.
Oh, okay. Okay. So you don't...
And I know that Patrick Chapin is already a music mogul on top of his million other pursuits.
That's correct.
So I have someone I could go to.
Look, you gotta leave Puffy alone, man. He's just doing his thing. Or is it Diddy or P. Diddy or Sean? Or,
yeah,
I'm not entirely sure. When is it acceptable to say you only get to have one name? Why do you just get to keep having names?
I don't know. I think it's fine. People have a lot of nicknames. I'm much more annoyed with the ruining of the art that mumbling over someone's tracks represents.
Okay.
Than someone calling themselves 7 different names.
I think it's offensive to just decide that you can keep switching your nickname.
Sure. It's not, I mean, it's not great, but whatever. Once you're that rich and successful, you're enabled by a million loons and sycophants, and you're just going to end up doing things like giving yourself a dozen nicknames. It's okay.
Like, who greenlit Diddy? That's not even a good name.
It doesn't matter, because he's surrounded by people who are like, that's a great idea. So that's how that sort of thing happens.
It's like the show Entourage.
Yeah.
That's his life.
Right.
A swamp to start things off here for Belfatto. Hoey will draw. Temple of Silence, take a look at the top card. It has become the bottom card. We'll head back Belfatto's way.
If I ever get really successful, you're going to be stunned with the things that I start doing.
Like adding cream to your coffee?
You're going to be stunned with how enabled I am.
It's a forest. He's got all 3. But that doesn't mean his hand is turned on. A card like Hero's Downfall is something he cannot cast right now. Hoey's going to sacrifice his Windswept Teeth.
Yeah, these decks are taxed. I mean, we saw that same thing going on with Ken Ketter's deck as well, needing double green and 4 different colors, double white for Soul Theros. It's tough to cast everything.
For the record, if I ever do become laughably rich like Mr. Combs, the first thing that I will be doing is playing a real-life edition of Carmen Sandiego.
Oh, that's great.
I'm just going to hide, I'm going to call you, and then you come find me.
Yeah, that's actually awesome.
There you go. That's a lifelong goal of mine. Sultai Charm will be a little draw 2, discard 1 mode here. Catalog, as it were.
And I think this might have been one of the reasons that Hoey led with Anafenza as opposed to some other threat was he knows the castable answer in Michael's hand right now is Sultai Charm, and Sultai Charm can't touch Anafenza. So much better to start here than, let's say, with Corsair Crewfix, when you know that Michael's mana only allows him to cast a certain portion of his reactive cards.
And you saw Sultai Charm in the first game.
Yeah.
You don't know how many are in the deck, of course, but you at least saw one, and if you can play around it accordingly, you might as well do so, and that's exactly what he did by casting Anafenza. You saw Belfatto discard Drown in Sorrow to Sultai Charm. He'll play a Polluted Delta. That'll give him a second black source of mana if necessary. And just a passing of the turn. So we're going to go back Hoey's way. Hoey will draw a card, it's a copy of End Hostilities. Not a card I expect to see in his deck after sideboard, actually. A little surprising.
Possible he's worried enough about Prognostic Sphinx, or he just thinks that Michael's deck is more creature-oriented than it actually is. He saw Caryatids, he saw Prognostic Sphinx. He doesn't know that his deck is as controlling as it actually is.
Looks like Belfatto's going to go down to 15, sacrificing the Polluted Delta. There's a Swamp. He's drawn so many basics this game, but you know, when you're a 3-color deck, you need those non-basics to really tie the room together. Opulent Palace and Temples. You know, fetch lands are nice, but there's Hero's Downfall to take care of that.
And scry lands are just so important in a general sense that, you know, you'd really like to have those.
Belfatto will draw. 2 mana. Sylvan Caryatid. There's a Temple. That'll help things out a little bit. Top card's going to become the bottom one here. And perhaps a passing of the turn, and it will be. Hoey going to play a copy of Windswept. He's sacrificed immediately. He's down to 17. See what land he wants to search up. He'll get a forest. And we'll see what he wants to deploy here now that he has 4 mana.
And now we'll see how much does Matthew respect the possibility of Disdainful Stroke. Does he try to play under it for a while?
Looks like he's just going to go with Corsair, so perhaps the answer is yes here. Depends what his hand allows him to do. But Corsair is going to resolve. Oh, he's already played a land for the turn and Windswept Heath, so the plane that's on top of his deck will be his draw next turn no matter what. Belfatto 1-tap, 5 lands and a Sylvan Caryatid in play. So access to 6 mana as he does draw a card. It's not a miracle. But it's good to be in practice, as here is a Corsair. Top card is a Cruise. There's a Delta. Trigger the Corsair, so long as he does remember. That's on him to make sure he gains that life.
Now, if Hoey goes on to lose this game, I think now seeing Treasure Cruise, he's going to get away from this sweeper plan a little bit, because the card advantage game, it really favors Michael, and Matthew's going to have to be the aggressor.
Hoey will draw the plains. Top card is a copy of Temple of Malady. Looks like we might be in Hoey's draw step here. And now we're moving into what looks like main phase 1. So Hoey will take the Temple. He'll put that into play. Trigger the Corsair, gain a little bit of life here. Go up to 18. And now some scry action. Top card's Llanowar Waste. It's going to become the bottom one. So now we'll see the next card. And this is a Sandsep Citadel. So more lands here for Matthew. But the big problem here is that he has not 1 but 2 copies of End Hostilities in hand, and they are not great in this matchup.
He's going to need Michael to play more to the board, and the problem is that if that happens, that opens up Michael to have a very efficient Treasure Cruise. Yeah. So Matthew getting kind of squeezed from both directions right now.
Seatron is going to come down. Looks like it's going to resolve, so Hoey's going to gain a little bit of life. Belfatto's going to lose some and pass the turn back. Belfatto going to sacrifice his Blue Delta, so happy letting Treasure Cruise go. A little surprising there, perhaps.
Well, I think that he may have it. The only thing that I can imagine is he has another one of his card drawers already.
Dig Through Time, perhaps, something like that.
Okay, that would explain it.
And that does explain it. There is Dig Through Time.
And I think he's got another copy of either Dig or Cruise in hand, so.
So Thoughtseize among the cards. He did have to reveal that one thanks to Corsair. He doesn't have to reveal the other ones just yet. So, of course, Belfatto will get to take a look at the top 7 and take 2 with him before moving on to his next turn.
And I think Hoey's probably looking at his hand as sweeper saying, this is not the fight that I expected to have. And if game 3 rolls around, I'm going to make some adjustments.
Yeah, perhaps he was expecting to play against something like Sultai Reanimator or the deck that Fabiano and Duke played the Players' Championship, that Sultai Constellation build, where Hostility is actually good against both of those strategies, but very poor against this deck that Belfatto is playing.
Or just some sort of, you know, Prognostic Sphinx, Ashiok, Kiora, mid-range kind of deck, you know, where the sweeper playing can overpower that sort of stuff. I think Matthew would not have guessed that Michael's list is what he's really playing against.
Temple of Mystery was the draw for the turn. It's going to come into play. Trigger the Courser with a little bit of life gain. And it looks like, given that Belfatto's not even reaching for his deck, he is happy with the top card of his deck in Thoughtseize. To Michael's credit, if he does draw and cast Thoughtseize next turn, he's going to get to pick up some information on what Hoey has done for his deck in sideboarding.
For sure, and Hoey's been solid on lands here, still has a full grip of cards, so the information is really valuable as well.
Courser going to trigger off the Sansep Citadel. Rhino into the red zone? Absolutely. Looks like Mr. Belfatto has some sort of removal spell here, or perhaps a Pearl Lake Ancient. Or a Silence the Believers with Strive, a card we don't see a ton of, but quite good in this situation, that's for sure.
Yeah, I really like the one copy of Silence of the Believers in these sideboards. I think post-board in the mid-range matchups, it's often just killing something and exiling it, which is already good because so many of these decks play Whip of Erebos. And it's not hard for the board to get to the spot where you're killing 2, sometimes 3 things. A great use of one sideboard slot.
Silence was such a big card at Pro Tour Journey into Nyx, especially for Chapin when he did win that tournament. We don't see that card very much, but I think it's a card that, you know, if we stay in this mid-range control world that we're in, we could see 1, 2, maybe even 3 of that card show up in 75s. It's very good, especially when you get to Strive it just once.
Definitely. I think that, you know, would you be better served with one copy of this in one under end versus 2 under ends in some of these lists? The answer could be yes.
Well, Hoey's hand here, it's kind of a disaster. And Hostility's Dune Blast Utter End, along with the Plains and a Courser of Crewfix, not very impressive at all.
Not very good. Low in power. And the information here, of course, insane for Michael, given that Matthew's hand has so many sweepers.
Fortunately for Hoey, he's won game number 1, because I would be surprised if he wins this one, given the texture of his hand. He'll get to really change up how he's sideboarded for game number 3, now that he's working with a lot different information.
Right. I mean, I can't imagine Matthew was anticipating Michael's list being this controlling in game 2.
Hoey going to draw a card, another copy of Utter End. He's all reactive at this point, and Belfatto's going to get proactive with the dig through time.
And the fact that Michael took the Courser out of that hand last turn instead of one of the sweepers is Michael saying, I'm not trying to kill you with creatures at all. Game 1 was sort of deceptive the way that played out. That's not really my deck's core strategy.
Now Belfatto, the thing he's got to do now, you know, dig through time, of course, is a very powerful card. You see him looking at 2 Courser of Crewfix among the other options, but now he's just got to work his way through those removal spells. Because he doesn't have, you know, some sort of like hexproof or indestructible threat, really. You know, Prognostic Sphinx kind of fulfills that role, but Doom Blast would be able to take care of that. So, you know, now he's just got to play some stuff and slog through it.
He can slog through it. He does have one copy of Pearl Lake Ancient, which is pretty good for slogging through. If he boarded his one copy of Garruk Apex Predator, that's an easy way to win through the sweepers. But you are correct. It's going to take some time for him to battle through all the sweepers that Matthew has.
And Matthew has not 1, but 2 copies of Utter End. Now only 1. But, you know, he's just got to get through all of that rubbish, does Belfatto. You know, fortunately for him, I mean, he's at 12. He's got a good hand. Obzon Charm, not a bad draw there for Hoey.
I think Matthew's got to draw a bunch of draw 2s to get back into this one.
Read the bones among them. But Obzon Charm will do just fine. So 2 cards coming at the cost of 2 life. He's got plenty of life to play with. There's another draw 2. See if he wants to fire at that now or wait. You know, again, that's what makes this Obzon deck so scary, is that it can actually keep up on cards with you.
Yeah, even though Michael's the blue deck, Michael's deck is much better at drawing cards. I mean, Dig Through Time and Treasure Cruise are much better than Read the Bones and Obzon Charm, but Matthew's not at a huge deficit in terms of the raw card count game.
Tempo of Silence scries the top card to the bottom. It looks like it might be time to peel 2 more.
Most likely digging for Thoughtseize if he's doing this on the main phase.
So here comes 2 cards, Elspeth and Courser. That's what the doctor ordered. Those are 2 real cards. Pass the turn back over to Belfatto. Belfatto with his 7 mana will draw a card. Let's see what Michael can put together on this turn. He's already reaching for mana, so he must have found something he likes. 5 mana. There's a Sphinx. And again, a fine card, but again, it's just another card that's going to die as we make our way through Matthew's answers.
But it's at least Matthew's whole turn, or at least most of his turn.
Well, you mentioned Thoughtseize being a big draw. Well, there that is.
Yeah.
Now, again, how does he want to lead off here is the big question. Does he actually want to lead off with Thoughtseize in this situation to make sure he can cast on hostilities? So it looks like the answer is yes.
I think the information's too valuable here. He's got to just know what's going on.
And an interesting hand to be sure. Pearl Lake Ancient, a Disdainful Stroke, a Doomway Giant, and a Thoughtseize on Belfatto's side. Yeah, Disdainful Stroke being up, that's with that 2 mana up front there. It felt like that's what it signified. And Hoey was able to sniff that out and actually make sure with Thoughtseize. Though the question is interesting on if you're supposed to take Disdainful Stroke to clear the path for a big spell, or if you're just supposed to say, hey, give me that Pearl Lake Ancient. That one's probably pretty important.
I can see arguments for, in fact, all the cards that are in Michael's hand. Probably not the Thoughtseize, but because one of Matthew's big payoff cards in hand is Elspeth, he even has to be concerned to some degree with Doomwave Giant. But Matthew now on the back of these back-to-back Abzan Charms and this Thoughtseize is really, he's caught up in terms of the card count. He's got a lot of power in his hand to work with. The sweepers are going to be pretty potent given how creature-heavy Michael's hand is. He's got a shot in this game, and it was looking pretty bleak 2 turns ago.
Well, decisions. Hoey's certainly going to take his time. Number 20 on our Season 1 leaderboard here for 2015. Did come into this tournament with a bye. We've seen him have a lot of success on the Open Series circuit, mostly in Legacy with Stoneforge Mystic, but no slouch in Standard either. He's got a real choice to make here. Not in a bad spot anymore, thanks to those Abzan Charms. You said it, those draw 2 is very important for him.
And keep in mind that Michael has a lot of information about Matthew's hand and how sweeper heavy it is, so that's part of the complexity here is any card that Matthew takes here informs Michael about what Matthew's plan is for the game. So this is a super complicated Thoughtseize, especially because all the cards in Michael's hand are of approximately even worth. There's a case for all of them.
He's going to go with the stroke. And I think the decision there for Hoey wouldn't surprise me if he's thinking about, can I beat Pearl Lake Ancient?
Yeah.
He's going to tap a bunch of mana right now, and he's actually going to go with Elspeth. You saw Belfatto reaching for his Prognostic Sphinx, expecting for it to die, but that is not the case, so does not elect to cast End Hostilities or Dune Blast in this situation.
Well, now that the Disdainful Stroke is out of the way, he can say, all right, go ahead. Do you add something to your board? Okay, now I sweep away everything. Do you attack my Elspeth? Okay, I play a sweeper. I plus my Elspeth. I have your Pearl Lake Ancient covered for the time being.
Belfatto going to cast Thoughtseize, so he wants to get a better idea of, okay, what's going on your side of the table? You see a Doom Blast and Hostilities, a Courser of Crewfix, and Utter End is what Hoey's working with. So some options to choose from here as well. Difficult Thoughtseize for both players.
Oh yeah, especially because they're working with so much information on both sides. I mean, everything is a tip of the hat in terms of information and what your game plan is.
It's interesting, too, because whatever you take gives away a little bit of information probably for what you're trying to set up.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, Doom Blast going to bite the dust. And now here comes the Sphinx, and it's always dangerous to let that thing attack because of the trigger. Get the Scry 3 times. Courser of Crewfix among the cards, and also a Temple of Mystery hiding out there. The third card is not being the Palace. So if you're Hoey, and of course you don't know this, yeah, not the worst place in the world to be, not the best 3 cards that Belfatto got to look at there.
Still, you just don't want the Sphinx going unchecked for that long,
Hero's Downfall going to take care of us. By the time he top deck there from Belfatto, he did not have that when the turn started.
Yeah, that's a huge deal because now Hoey's in a position where he has to use a sweeper to answer this Prognostic Sphinx most likely, and then it starts freeing up Pearl Lake Ancient, Doomwave Giant, other significant cards in Michael's hand.
Hoey's draw was a copy of Thoughtseize. Big draw there for him.
Yep. It means now that he at least can get out of the Pearl Lake Ancient, which is the biggest long-term threat that Michael's signifying right now.
Looks like Hoey may lead off with Courser, and he will. So refusing to cast End Hostilities at this point. Take a look at the top card. It's a copy of Sorin. Solemn Visitor, not bad.
Well, he may feel like right now he's in a position to win this damage race straight up.
There's Thoughtseize.
And if Michael commits more to the board, then the sweeper becomes very good.
Yeah, it looks like he wants to race. He's going to take Doomwake Giant, which can't kill the tokens now because it's gone. Pearl Ignition is the last card in Belfatto's hand. And we could see Utter End be used just as a, kind of just to put him in the squeeze, honestly.
Exactly. Just trade your whole turn. And Michael, you know, he goes ahead and deploys the Pearl Lake Agent. Then if he returns lands to his hand, it's a long time before that Pearl Lake comes back.
Yeah, I like this play a lot here because it forces Belfatto's hand in a very weird way. You're going to discard right now to keep around Estus Sphinx, which, by the way, will be tapped, mind you. So that's going to be tapped now, so no attack, no scry, no nothing. Belfatto's going to draw a card. I believe he knows what card is coming. It's a Courser. So he gets to cast that, take a look at the top card, trigger his Temple. He knew that was there. So now we get to see this card. Of course, he gains life. Temple of Malady is going to go to the bottom. So now that's going to go to the bottom. Take a look at the top card. It's a dig through time, which is very powerful, but we don't know if he's going to have time to make it there.
And that's the powerful thing in this spot for Matthew is with the end hostilities in hand, he always has the option of just stopping what's ever happening on the board and resetting. He's not necessarily the best to play that game against Michael because of all Michael's powerful card drawing spells, but at least he has an out in case the board develops in a way that's bad for Hoey.
Well, I think I've got a feeling at least that he likes the way the board is developing right now. Going to have the opportunity to add Sorin to it in just a moment if he'd like. First things first, though. Temple, trigger, up to 10. Good card on top of the deck there in Liliana. Powerful in the abstract, but is it what he's looking for right now?
It might be, because a path that Hoey has right now is playing Sorin, plussing Sorin, hitting for a bunch of damage, untapping, and using Liliana to tutor for Siege Rhino or another Sorin. So he can actually try to burn Michael out of the game at this point.
The old Abzan burn you out strategy. There's nothing this deck can't do. Sorin's going to come in. Hoey considering ticking it up. Of course, he does start at 4, though. Maybe perhaps having a flying 2/2 black vampire is where he wants to be. But instead, bringing it in the red zone here. And what might be the most overlooked part of this is that he's going to gain a whole bunch of life in this exchange.
Yeah, he's got a big cushion. He still has a sweeper in hand. And he's going to have an opportunity to tutor for a lethal Siege Rhino off of the Liliana next turn. So a lot of good stuff going on for Hoey this turn. I like the way that he's navigated this game.
Some damage will happen. Some damage will be dealt. Belfatto's down to 2. Hoey, of course, gains a bunch of life there. Dig through time to draw here for Belfatto. Top card is a Garrick Apex Predator. How does that change things?
Might be a little late to the party. Yeah, I think even with a full discount and a land drop. A full discount on the dig through time and a land drop, he's short this turn. It is exciting, however.
Yeah, I mean, of course, you know, Garrick does cost 7. So if he wants to play,
yes. Okay.
If he, I mean, but this would force his dig through time to be Garrick plus lands, and I don't know if Garrick plus land is what he wants to do. You know, that's the bigger question at this point. I mean, it's Garrick. It's hard to pass up on that card. Though to be fair, maybe if he finds something like Doomwake Giant, then all of a sudden it's I'll take Doomwake Giant, kill your stuff, and have Garrick as my backup card.
That's very solid.
Yeah. And he's found two cards, that he likes.
Because his attackers allow him to clean up Sorin. So he can get out of that, assuming that he can clean up the board.
Dissolve the top card here. Let's also not forget, too, that if it is Garrick plus lane, he gets a gain of life. Yeah, he gets a gain of life. Go up to 3, which is a big deal. And he's tapping 7 mana, so we know what this is going to be. It's the Apex Predator. Now, a lot of text on this card. Destroy target Planeswalker is 1.
So
destroy target creature,
too.
you gain life equal to his toughness, so kill your Courser, gain 4 life is a big deal. Of course, you can make a 3/3 black beast creature token. We'll have to check to see if we have those with us. Be a little surprised if we do. With Death Touch on the battlefield, and then, well, we'll talk about the emblem if we get there.
And the Dissolve on top of Michael's deck is a big deal, too, because, you know, Hoey's line of play here of using Liliana to search for Siege Rhino no longer works.
Yep. This game has gone through a couple of swings, my friends. Sorin looks like it's going to take up. He's coming in the red zone, going after Garrick, which he will get to kill.
Yeah,
which is a big deal.
A big deal, and it also means that Michael's creatures on the way back cannot kill the Sorin.
Yep.
So this is a pretty solid constellation prize here for Hoey.
And he might be happy resetting. Yeah, he is. This is what you talked about with the reset button, always having this available if he didn't like how things were going. And given that he's working with the information of, okay, you have no board, I know you're drawing Dissolve, I can play around this appropriately, not a bad turn there.
Yeah, and now he's working towards a Sorin emblem, which is going to be a big problem for Michael's deck to beat, because you look through this list, there's no Planeswalkers, except for the Garruk that has just died. So he's going to be really hard-pressed to beat this.
Oh, what a draw. What a draw. A little surprising he doesn't even cast the Dissolve, though. I'd rather get the Scry there.
Yeah, you might as well Scry.
Now Sorin's going to make a Vampire token. Thoughtseize is so powerful. And now he gets to clear the path for exactly this in Liliana. You have to imagine we're going to see some tutoring here. And it could be that burnout plan that you mentioned to go find a Siege Rhino. Yeah, because Siege Rhino next turn allows Matthew to plus. I guess he's still short of lethal if he pluses, but puts him in a squeeze.
It's still a lot of it's a lot of damage.
And you saw him very quickly search for something. He didn't get a great look. It may have been a Siege Rhino, but he knew exactly what he wanted to search for.
Yep. This has just been a great game from Hoey. I mean, it was looking bleak for him in a number of turns.
Belfatto is going to come down, and it's going to be an extension of the hand. So Matthew Hoey is going to win this match here over Michael Belfatto. 2-0. Abzan midrange are going to take down Sultai Control, but this is part of the appeal of Abzan midrange is when you get against these other midrange and control decks, you can just sideboard into a lean, mean, butt-kicking machine.
Well, and I didn't even think Matthew had the ideal setup there. He was really sweeper heavy, but the way the game played out, the sweepers were just good enough. I mean, there's a couple spots where Michael needs, just one more attacker, one more blocker, one extra counter spell, and Matthew's entire line of play doesn't work. But Matthew had just the right amount of resources.